live from, once again, my college dorm room. It's another episode of Between the 20s with me, your host, Max Raymond. This episode is being pre-recorded, and I'll tell you exactly why. It's being pre-recorded because at the exact same time that this show is going live, USA is hopefully playing in the gold medal game for men's hockey. And as a big hockey fan, I'm hopefully watching USA playing right now. I don't know. What I do know is the women just took home the gold against Canada in an incredible game that ended in overtime. It is currently Thursday, February 19th at 6:21 p.m. or 6:20 p.m. that I started this. And yeah, that's plain and simple. So I'm pre-recording right now with the hopes that USA is playing in the gold medal game, and I'm watching it. If they're not and they end up in the bronze game, which was on Saturday, then I'm probably unhappy at the time that you're listening to this. So let's hope that I'm actually watching USA playing, I believe, Canada in that gold medal game. But I still got a show to give to you guys, and I have a mock draft to drop. So today I'm going to be releasing my mock draft 1.0. This is my first official mock draft that I am releasing to the world. And before we get into it, of course, I'm going to tell you guys how I kind of go about my mock drafts. When I make a mock draft, I'm drafting based off of what I think is going to happen. This is a projection mostly of what I think is going to happen, mixed in a little bit of what I think should happen. So again, it's I try to stay on a more projected opinion of, all right, this is what I think will happen. But of course, I get down to the line and down to some later picks, and just based on how the board falls, it kind of slowly, when you get into these later mock drafts, turns into what you think kind of should happen. So that's basically what it is. But again, this is my mock draft. I'm going to be going through the entire first round of the NFL draft and picking what I believe every team is going to take and talking about all the players that they do take. So let's get right into it. And the first player that is going to be coming off the board to the Las Vegas Raiders is going to be Fernando Mendoza. I feel like that's just really self-explanatory. Mendoza, the top quarterback, one of the best and highly regarded ranked players in all of college football this past season. An incredible talent. And it comes as no surprise that the Raiders, who desperately need a quarterback, well, they take him. At the second pick, the New York Jets are on the clock, and this one is a very, interesting pick. A lot of people have gone a multitude of different ways with this one, but for me, I'm going to be going with the linebacker out of Ohio State, Arvell Reese. And at first look, 6'4", 243 pounds, an incredible build and size to Reese. As I take a sip of water, but not just that. He's just an incredible talent, a great player. He is an edge rusher, or had played this past season like an edge rusher, and I kind of comp him a little bit to Abdul Carter, in the sense that Carter, majority of his college career, was an off-ball linebacker, and then all of a sudden his senior year, or his last year before he went into the draft, he was an edge rusher. Arvell Reese, similar sense. When you look at his numbers, looking at 2024, he only had 19 pass rushing snaps. In 2025, 119. That is 19 of his 19 of his 309 snaps in 2024, he rushed the passer. In 2025, he got to see 651 defensive snaps, and he rushed the passer on 119 of them. So again, more of a linebacker, certainly, than a guy like Abdul Carter. But when you look at the Jets, they just need so much. And again, Arvell Reese, an incredible talent, can be both edge as well as off-ball linebacker. So much versatility with him. Next up, we've got the Arizona Cardinals. And the Cardinals need offensive line help desperately. When you look at this Cardinals team this past season, Kyler Murray slumped off. And I think it's time for the Cardinals to move on. I think that Jacoby Brissett was the better quarterback. But the Cardinals are in a position where they really can't take a quarterback. There is not another guy that's, I believe, even worth considering to put in the first round, and genuinely believe that Ty Simpson, who is my next best quarterback, is fringe, really second round kind of talent. I need to see it out of him. But we could talk about him in another episode, and I will talk about him in another episode. But when I look at this Cardinals team, yeah, do they need some help at the running back position? Sure. But then again, they've also had some great talent at the running back position, and all their guys just keep getting hurt. So, sure, but they could maybe get some filler players later in this draft. But the next best thing that they need is offensive line. So I'm going to go with an offensive lineman. And the guy that I'm going to pick, 6'6", 315 pounds. I'm going with Francis Mauigoa, the tackle from Miami. And the thing with Mauigoa is that a lot of people are nervous about his size. A lot of people are nervous about his arm length. But for me, when you look at Mauigoa, again, you're nervous about the arm length, sure. So then what? You bump him inside the guard? Well, the Cardinals need guard just as much as they need a tackle. So I think that Mauigoa is just a great pick all around for Arizona. I think he's the best offensive lineman in general available in this draft. Number one guy, in my opinion. And so that's why I have him going there at number 3. Moving on to number 4. And when I look through this season and I just look through general team rankings, one thing I see that's absolutely for sure is a defense that played out of their mind this year. And that was Texas Tech. The Texas Tech Red Raiders defense is so incredibly good that genuinely, if you are an NFL GM, an NFL team, a front office staff, trying to figure out what player that you want to draft and you're thinking about taking a defensive player, if there's a Red Raider on the board, you should take him because of how incredibly good this Texas Tech defense played last year. Genuinely got them that first round bye. It was off of the defense. The whole reason why this Texas Tech team had a chance to beat Oregon and to stay in that game was because of their defense. And so because of that, I'm going to be going with edge rusher David Bailey out of Texas Tech. It's just an incredible freak athlete and a really great player. So I've got him going to the Tennessee Titans. I know I talked about in last week's episode about one thing the Titans need to do is building around Cam Ward. But I genuinely believe that they can do that later in the draft. But also, Ward needs a good defense in order to be able to get stops so that he can get the ball back and go win games. So with all that taken into consideration, I think that David Bailey is by far the guy. Now, next up is the New York Giants. And I've seen a lot of people go a multitude of different ways with the Giants. And I will genuinely come out and say it, that the people who have the Giants drafting a wide receiver here at 5 are wrong, are flat out wrong. And I don't know if they're drafting based on what they think is going to happen, which if they think the Giants are taking a wide receiver here, they're wrong because this wide receiver class is so deep that it's genuinely not worth it when the Giants have more important needs. And if they're making a mock draft based off of what they think should happen, then they're wrong because, again, the Giants have so many more needs. So I'm just going to flat out come out and say that if you are somebody out there that genuinely wants or thinks the Giants will or should take a wide receiver here at 5, you're wrong. And you need to readjust your thinking. Now, having that been said, I believe that the Giants need help with their secondary. They need help guarding the pass. Absolutely. But I think there's some great options later in this draft. But one thing they also desperately need that is an absolute must is offensive line. This Giants offensive line right now is abysmal. It is awful. They got Andrew Thomas, but he can be banged up at times. I know they took Marcus Bowe last year, but they got to move him to guard. He's not a tackle, and they're putting him out there as a backup tackle, and he's not a tackle. So they need another guy on the right side to defend Jackson Dart, who you need to protect, and to also be able to create holes and opportunities for guys like Cam Skattebo to run. And so I have them taking the second best tackle and the second best offensive lineman in this entire draft out of Utah, Spencer Fano. An absolutely incredible prospect. Fano, 6'6", 308. Incredible build. And last year, 0 sacks allowed. The year before that, 1. The year before that, 2. But just a great all-around great talent. And so, Spencer Fano to the Giants. Now at 6, this is where I believe you could see the first wide receiver go off the board. The Browns do not have a real standout wide receiver. And Jerry Jeudy had a brutal season last year. But not only did Jerry Jeudy not really play like a wide receiver 1, he was barely really playing well like a wide receiver 2 even could be considered. But even if Jeudy is the wide receiver 1, there is no wide receiver 2. Maybe Isaiah Bond could turn into something, but I don't know. Maybe, but they need some wide receiver help desperately. And I believe that the Browns have a great defense. They've got a pretty good offensive line. They've got some running back options. And I know I just talked about how deep this wide receiver class is, but I genuinely think Carnell Tate is too good to pass up if you're the Cleveland Browns. You've got 2 quarterbacks that could be the guy, genuinely. I think Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel could both potentially turn into, at the very least, a system quarterback. It's just a matter of, do you solely give one of them the time to grow and advance, and if he doesn't work, pivot to the other and handle the situation right? I don't know. It's Cleveland Browns. They don't really do things right. They're like the Jets, but I think the Jets are turning around. So maybe the Browns are too, and this could be a pick that will help them. Next up is the Washington Commanders, and this is where I have edge rusher out of Miami, Ruben Bain, going. There's definitely a lot of people out there that are wondering, when am I going to have Ruben Bain drafted? Well, here it is. A 6'3", 270-pound edge rusher out of Miami was an absolute demon. 12 sacks this past year, 68 quarterback hurry-ups. Just a genuine weapon and a reason why Miami went on the run they did. A true difference maker and game changer. And so I've got Ruben Bain going to the Commanders. Next up is the Saints. Oh, the New Orleans Saints. What to do with the New Orleans Saints? The New Orleans Saints, it's tricky. It really is. But I talked about, again last week, one thing that I think they must do. And that one thing I think they must focus on is building around their quarterback, Tyler Shuck, who found a way to scratch and claw himself into the Rookie of the Year conversation. The fact that he was even in the conversation for Rookie of the Year should warrant him receiving some sort of award. And no, not a participation award. I mean, genuinely some honor, because he managed to turn this Saints team with an aging Alvin Kamara, who's really not the guy, with an offensive line that needs some work, with a non-existent, basically, defense, with his wide receiver 1 actually staying healthy relatively. Olave stayed relatively healthy basically the whole season, but his wide receiver 2 in Rashid Shaheed getting traded away midseason. And he found a way to, win a couple games and get himself into the Rookie of the Year conversation. So some of their top needs, wide receiver, guard, defensive line, I think they're going to go with wide receiver here because I think it's too early to take a guard, and I don't really see a true defensive lineman warranting this high of a pick. And so I'm going to have them taking Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver out of the University of Southern California. Yeah, USC. That's right. The 5'11", 195. He's got some nice wheels to him. He's got some nice speed, true difference maker. So give me Mekhi Lemon. Now, I'm not going to waste too much time on this because I'm going with a common consensus, and it really just feels right. Like, I know people are going to get sick and tired of this, but at number 9, pick overall, the Chiefs are going to take the by far best running back. In my opinion, the single best player in this entire draft class, Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. This guy, when you talk about difference makers, when you talk about guys that basically carry their team, you cannot have this conversation without the mention of Jeremiah Love, who has had back-to-back 1,000 rushing yard seasons for Notre Dame. He had 17 touchdowns last year, 18 this past season. He had one more touchdown this past season, as well as a little over 200 more rushing yards in 4 less games played because they didn't make the playoffs nor make it all the way to the national championship game. And yet he somehow played even better. Granted, did he get a lot more work? Sure, because they had C.J. Carr instead of what was his name? Riley. Definitely, yes. He got more running time with the younger C.J. Carr in, certainly, but still played out of his absolute mind. Did Jeremiah Love. An incredible talent. Riley Leonard, that's his name. So I don't know why I couldn't remember Riley Leonard, but Riley Leonard was the quarterback for Notre Dame last year. Definitely better than C.J. Carr was this season, but C.J. Carr's got time to learn, and he will grow. But, wow, Jeremiah Love, an incredible prospect, and the Chiefs need a running back. I understand maybe you want to give Pacheco a little bit more leeway, give him a little more opportunity, but you certainly cannot be running Kareem Hunt out there as your RB2. You've got to step up with a running game. You've got to take the pressure off of Mahomes to be the entire offense. And so this is a great way to do so. Now we've got the Cincinnati Bengals. And this is what I also believe going to be a real... The next couple of picks, I think a lot of people are going to be mocking the same way. And when I make some new mock drafts and I do like a 1.5 and I put in a little twist with my mock, I'm certainly going to do so to alter the next couple of picks. But I think the next couple of picks from 9 down to 12, if not 13, is going to kind of be really the same across a lot of people in the world of sports media and a lot of people that are going to be making these mock drafts. I really believe so. And it's just because there's a true glaring, maybe not 11, could see some shakeup, but from 9, 10, and then 12, and probably even and 13, true glaring need for all of these teams. For the Chiefs, it was a running back. For the Bengals, it's genuinely a defensive player. And so the best defensive player still on the board is Ohio State's Caleb Downs. The safety, an absolute incredible talent. And I understand that he falls here just because of the positional value of a safety. But Cincinnati, they need a safety. They need defense. They had no defense. And Caleb Downs as a safety helps you both over the top, but he can also come down and help you in the run. So he helps all around just improve this defense significantly. Now 11 with the Dolphins. Again, I say that this is going to be a common consensus position at the very least. Could be a wide receiver here. I think it's between two positions of either a wide receiver or a corner. But when you look at the wide receivers available, you have the last of the big three names in Jordan Tyson of my mock draft still there. If Carnell Tate and or Mekhi Lemon somehow fall here to 11, I think the Dolphins, without a doubt, take a wide receiver in one of those two. Now, if it's Jordan Tyson is the best wide receiver available here, I think they're a little lenient on that because Tyson is, unlike the other two, injury prone. He's had quite a good number of injuries. Now, I understand there's also a top-named cornerback in Jermon McCoy out of Tennessee who also missed all of last year with an injury, but the difference is that was one injury that we've seen a lot of players come back from. Tyson has had quite a lot more. But yet, there's still another player that is top ranked that is in either the wide receiver or cornerback position. He is a cornerback that had an incredible season this past year, and that's Mansour Delane, the corner out of LSU. Mansour Delane, just a great player. Great reads, great awareness on the field. I enjoyed watching his tape, and I'm going to be watching a lot more of all of these guys as the offseason continues, and I'm so excited for the Combine coming up next week. So I might have another mock draft next week, but I'll definitely be doing a lot of draft talk as we're going to have reactions to the Combine. And so a guy that also can further climb up draft boards, and if not draft boards, can just certainly solidify himself as a top draft target, Mansour Delane. That is who I have the Dolphins taking. And finally, the Cowboys is a team that I think is true, genuine, probably the last pick besides maybe one or two other teams that is like common consensus going to be true and genuine. It's going to be the Dallas Cowboys. This Dallas Cowboys team, they need help on defense drastically as well. They need so much help defensively, and especially at the linebacker position. So, of course, why not take the best true linebacker? Because, again, Orville Reese is kind of converting over to be a little bit more of an edge rusher. However, there's a guy on the board that plays the game of football a bit like a safety. However, he's 6'5", 243 pounds. So he's built like a linebacker. Great pass defensive player, and that is Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. The third Ohio State Buckeye to be drafted in this first round, and certainly not the last. And we'll get into the next guy in a little bit. He's going to go a little bit later, but this Ohio State team, star-studded, stacked, loaded, incredible players. Just an all-around great lineup. They had a great roster that they built, and Ryan Day did an incredible job, and I'll give him his flowers. They put together a good roster. It won't be good enough to continue to win and beat Michigan in future years, but, they got their win this past year, and I'll give him his flowers. With 3 guys projected to go in the first round in the top 12 picks. Sonny Styles, though, if you've got the time, go watch some tape on Sonny Styles. Go just watch his highlight reel, and you'll see how great of a player he is. Now we get to pick number 13, and the Rams. The Rams need help at the cornerback position. And there's one true standout corner right now that is atop the boards. And a lot of people are hesitant on him because he missed all of last season. That being said, reports are coming out that he was actually, this player, healthy and able to return, but didn't because the school that he played for, that being Tennessee, didn't want him to get hurt ahead of his potential to either return or go to the draft, being that he was a junior. And that's Jermod McCoy. He was, yes, that good in 2024 that having not even played a snap of 2025, he's still considered to be a top 15 pick in this year's NFL draft. I believe he's going to test at the combine. I hope he does so that more of the U.S. can get to see how great of a player he is because he's incredible. Incredible. A great star. Again, another all-around great player. And so because of that, I've got him going 13. Now 14 to the Ravens. There's a handful of different places that we really could go. We could go with the defensive interior. We could take Peter Woods out of Clemson, Caleb Banks out of Florida. I know he had been hurt for a lot of last year, but he also had a great 2024. We could go with guard Vega Ioane, Penn State. But I believe that they're going to go with the wide receiver. I'm going to have the Baltimore Ravens take Jordan Tyson because you cannot continue to go out there and put a team out there where your number one target is Zay Flowers, and then you've got 2 tight ends splitting receptions, and then your next best wide receiver is either Rashad Bateman or Nelson Aguilar? Is your next best receiver? Come on. If you want to be a true, genuine playoff contending team, you need some wide receiver help. You cannot put basically the whole weight of this offense on Lamar, Zay Flowers, and Derrick Henry. No. And I think that Baltimore finally realizes that they need help drastically with their wide receiver room, and so they're going to take Jordan Tyson here. Next up, we've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And there's, again, a position group that I think they have to draft here. Not here, excuse me. They have to draft and work on this offseason. all last year, if you go back, I'd been mocking Tampa Bay to take one player. It got so bad to the point where I would have to make a rule for myself that Tampa Bay cannot take this player, and I would have to find a different location for him to go. And the last 2-3 weeks before the actual draft, that player being linebacker Jahad Campbell, who was out of Alabama, I had him being taken before the Bucs. All of a sudden, he falls to Tampa Bay, and they don't take him. And instead, he falls all the way to the 30th pick with the Eagles, or the 32nd pick with the 32nd pick with the Eagles, and he goes and balls out and has a great season. So I think Tampa needs to draft a linebacker, but there are a good amount of really talented linebackers that could fall. You look at Georgia's C.J. Allen, who I think could get taken, as well as Texas's Anthony Hill Jr., two guys that could go in the first round. But then you look down this list. You got Jake Golday, Josiah Trotter, Missouri, great player. Deontay Lawson, Alabama, great guy. Jacob Rodriguez, who I absolutely love as a linebacker prospect. And, again, Texas Tech Red Raider. Aiden Fisher, Indiana, great guy. There are some really good linebackers down this board. And I think that Wesley Bisante, Miami, another great linebacker. So I think that there's some really good linebackers down this board. And so because of that, I think they're going to go to a different position. And there's another position that generally could help, and it's the tight end position. And I understand that there's a lot of good with this Bucs offense, and I think that they genuinely could go tight end and take Kenyon Sadiq. But that's not where I'm going to go with this. No. I'm actually going to go with an edge rusher today. I'm talking myself out of it. I did a lot of prep, and I came prepared, and I had them taking. You know what? No. I'm going to stick with my gut. You know what? I'm not going to talk myself out of it. I was going to, and then I saw the depth at the edge rusher position. I was like, you know what? No. They're going to take tight end out of Oregon, Kenyon Sadiq. Kenyon Sadiq, 6'3", 245, has started to rise and see his draft stock heavily increase towards the late end of this past season, especially as he became the true number one receiving target for a Dante Moore-led Oregon offense. But that's not just why I'm going to have him drafted here, no, because Tampa Bay's got plenty of great receiving options. Instead, I'm going to really have him taken here for the true reason of his blocking ability, which is so underrated but is so true. He's a good blocker. He really is. And I believe that as a tight end, you have to both be able to block and catch the football. A tight end is basically the cross between an offensive lineman and a wide receiver. That's truly what a tight end is. And so in order to be considered a tight end, you're a big-bodied player that can block and also go out and catch the football. You're not just solely a receiver. And Kenyon Sadiq is a guy that can do that. Without a shadow of a doubt, he is a guy that can go out and do that. Now we've got the New York Jets again at 16. And I've seen a lot of people go in a lot of different directions here. But there's one specific direction that I'm going to go in. I've seen people go wide receiver here, but I don't think so. I understand you want to continue to go and build around, but again, the wide receiver depth is so incredibly crazy. And you know what? I'm going to take a quick second to talk about it. Guys that I think could go in the first round. You've got still on the board Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, Chris Bell, Skylar Bell, Chris Brazel. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 first round caliber wide receivers still on the board. Now let's get into fringe first round, second round guys. Omar Cooper Jr., Indiana. Elijah Surratt, Indiana. Zachariah Branch, Georgia. Malachi Fields, Notre Dame. And that's, again, just to name a few. This wide receiver class is deep. Deep. Like, really deep. And so, because of which, I don't think that the Jets are going to need to take a wide receiver here. Now, a position they do desperately need is defensive line, specifically on the interior, because they just traded away their top defensive lineman. So who are they going to take? Well, you've got Peter Woods. He's still here, and he had a great 2024. However, he's now slowly dropping because of a poor 2025. And granted, all of Clemson played terribly. You got Caleb Banks, but he was injured last year. But no, there's a guy that I think is genuinely better than all of them. When you talk about a guy that's on the defensive interior, you think of a guy that's just going to plug the holes. The offensive line is there to create holes. Well, no. You got a guy that's going to plug these running lanes as well as create pressure from the inside. And there's one guy, 6'3", 326, that I believe is the best in this whole class at doing that. And that's Caden McDonald. I believe Caden McDonald is the best defensive interior, defensive tackle in this entire draft class. I truly believe that. And so I have the Jets taking him. Next at 17, we've got the Detroit Lions. I have the Lions going with an offensive lineman. And I have them taken, out of Alabama, Caden Proctor. I've taken some time to watch some tape on Caden Proctor. And he is, as John Gruden would say, he's nicey. He's nicey with it. 6'7", 366. Another guy that there are some questions to his arm length, which, again, for those of you who don't know, arm length, obviously arm length of the arms. But the reason why it's important is when you're on the offensive line or the defensive line, you want to get the first touch. The player that makes contact first has such a great advantage, and that is why arm length is so important, because of the ability for an offensive lineman who has a longer arm is going to be able to reach out and grab and do what he wishes with the defensive player before the defensive player can make contact with him. And so that impact, and again, that contact is so incredibly crucial and such a difference maker. That is why it is important. Now at 18, we've got the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings have some interesting needs, certainly. Running back, they need interior O-line and center, but they also need DB help. And there's a really good corner still on this board here. The first guy that I've got being drafted out of Clemson, it's going to be Avion Terrell. I like Avion Terrell. I do. I think that really, realistically, he could be even taken higher. There's a lot of people that believe that he could go a lot lower than 18, but I'm somebody that thinks that he might deserve to go all the way up, even potentially 13. I genuinely see a world where if the draft were to be today, Terrell goes at 13 and Jermon McCoy falls down to 18 to the Vikings. But if the Vikings are going with a cornerback here, I believe that Terrell is the best on the board and certainly the best for the Vikings. Next up is the Carolina Panthers. And they're in a really, really strange position. They need some help in a bunch of different places. But again, I talked about how you want to confirm that Bryce Young is your guy. And I think doing so, if you shore up the defense to be able to get stops so that Bryce Young has plenty of time to go show out on the field, that is certainly a great opportunity. They need some linebacker help, but I think it's just a little too early to take C.J. Allen. We'll see how he tests and how he does at the combine, but I think it might still be a little too early for him. You want to know who it's not too early for? It's not too early for Peter Woods, and that's who I have drafted here by the Carolina Panthers. Peter Woods, again, when we talk about last season, played so incredibly well. So incredibly well. And excuse me, not last year, 2024. He's one of those guys that was a 2024 demon. And I understand that he kind of had a little bit of a fall off in 2025, but then again, so did the entire Clemson team. And ironically, now I have 2 Clemson Tigers going back to back. Do I go 3 Tigers in a row and take TJ Parker here? Do I do it? Not yet. It's a little too early for TJ Parker. Instead, we've got the Dallas Cowboys, and I have them drafting a guy that's not really on a lot of people's boards, but is slowly climbing. But the amount of hype that I'm hearing around this player about the potential for what his speed could be and the belief that he's going to test at the combine, and if he does, how incredibly fast he's going to run and how he could be the fastest time but also set potential records. That's Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina, the Gamecock. And I've got him going here to the Cowboys. And I'll tell you why. The Cowboys need help with their passing defense. Was the worst in the league. Genuinely to the point where they had a top 5 offense in the league. They had a top 5 passing offense in the league and a bottom 5 passing defense in the league. They threw for the most yards, but also allowed the most passing yards. Pretty sure that Dak Prescott threw for 400 yards week 2 against the Giants, while Russell Wilson also threw for 400 yards. Like, genuinely insane that the Cowboys didn't play better with how good their offense was, but their defense was so bad, especially against the pass. And so I've got them just as a non-negotiable using their first-round picks to fix up their secondary. And again, I believe that when it comes to the edge rusher position where they could use some help, potentially the wide receiver position if they don't keep George Pickens, there's depth there. Speaking of the wide receiver position, we've got the Steelers up here at pick number 21. And this is an interesting pick. And I pause, and I'm going to take another pause because I'm going to let everybody that's listening ponder and think. And for those of you who are following and big draft fans, there's a position that you might even agree with a lot of big-time analysts in thinking that the Steelers are going to go and draft here. And as I take my sip of water, I will leave you with the thought of who's the Steelers quarterback? Because it's very believed that Aaron Rodgers is retiring. So they don't have a quarterback right now. Or do they? See, a lot of people have the Steelers drafting Ty Simpson, quarterback out of Alabama. And I'll be one of the first to tell you that Simpson is definitely better than what his numbers and what this past season says about him. Because he played on an Alabama team that had no running game and a struggling offensive line. And it's really hard to be a quarterback and throw the ball when you have nobody open because the opposing defense is rushing 3, maybe 4 guys, and the rest of the team is back on pass coverage. I mean, there's nobody open. How are you supposed to throw a ball to somebody that's not even open? And that's basically what Simpson had to deal with his entire past season. And yet, even still, I don't think that he's the guy. No, because the Steelers do have a quarterback. Let's not forget, they drafted a national champion out of Ohio State last year. And I feel like a lot of people are forgetting that this guy was taken and that this guy's a national champion. And that while, yes, he did have 3 of the 3 best wide receivers in all of college football when he went and won it, and when he had the best 2 running backs and the best defense and the best everything, he still went out and balled. He still went out and made the plays. Yeah, he could be considered a system guy, but you know what? A system guy can still go win you a Super Bowl. And that's Will Howard. And so because Will Howard, and I genuinely believe Will Howard could be the future if you give him the weapons, is going to be the guy, I have the Steelers going out and giving him a weapon, and that's going to be Denzel Boston out of Washington. 6'4", 209 pounds, but he plays a little bit more like a slot guy more than he is a deep threat, but he can go up and catch the deep ball. Denzel Boston is a baller. He's a guy that's going to go out and make plays. And so why not, when you've got a potential, what I believe will be a young Will Howard in there in his rookie year, truly, give him a good wide receiver target. Next up, the Chargers. This is going to be an O-lineman. I don't care. It has to be an O-lineman. I don't care how many injuries they had. That Chargers O-line was bad to the point where it's got people questioning if Justin Herbert is truly a top talent quarterback that many think he is, or if he's a bottom guy that's carried by his team, which I don't think he is. It's just bad. And so they need a guard. They need interior help. And why not go with the best guard available? Vega Ioane. That is the pronunciation that I believe most people are going for. Hopefully at the combine it gets cleared up. It's really confusing, and I'm seeing everybody pronouncing it many of different ways, but the most solid pronunciation that I've heard somebody give that is a pro, I believe it was Field Yates. It was either Field Yates or Mel Kiper, but it was in the First Draft podcast with Field Yates and Mel Kiper. They went with Vega Ioane, so that's the pronunciation I'm going to go with. Hopefully we get a true confirmation at the combine. But Chargers are taking guard Vega Ioane. Next up, we've got the Eagles. The Eagles, in an interesting season, and I think that they do need to move on from A.J. Brown. But, I think that they could definitely benefit from some edge help, and why not go with the best edge rusher available in Cassius Howell. Next, the Cleveland Browns are back on the clock. This the Jacksonville pick that they got last year when they traded down from 2 to 5, allowing Jacksonville to get Travis Hunter and take in Mason Graham. The Browns have already taken a wide receiver. Why not go and help your offense some more? Because truly, this defense is great. This defense is incredible. So let's go, and it could get better with Mason Graham going into his second year, with Carson Schlesinger, the rookie of the year, going into his second year. This defense could genuinely improve with some genuine options for another edge rusher opposite of Myles Garrett. Get some maybe corner help or something. There's opportunities down the board. But what they need now is offensive line help. And there just so happens to be another tackle from Utah that is incredibly good. I talked about Spencer Fano, and he went 5 to the Giants. But there's another guy that I feel like this is even low for, but yet I don't really see another place higher up on the board that he can go. And that's Caleb Lomu. So I'm going to go with Caleb Lomu. 25, the Bears. I've got them taking Caleb Banks. I've got some questions on Caleb Banks, and I need to watch a lot more tape. But from the little bit that I've seen, my question is about his play style, his mindset on the field. Kind of saw him being a little, I don't want to call it lazy, but there were certainly some plays where he was not going down the field and chasing down the football. There were certainly some plays where it almost seemed like the ball went to the opposite side of the field from him, and he kind of gave up. Now, granted, this was the first game back from injury that I was watching, so I need to watch the next game that he had played, and I need to take the time and see, hey, first of all, how was his 2024? How did he play there? How did he play in the second game? And was he really just trying to take it easy because it was his first game back? So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that so far what I've seen is that he was taking it easy and he wasn't trying to re-injure himself by pushing too hard, but there could be something there. Next up, the Bills. The Bills are drafting wide receiver. And when I look through this draft board, there's some great options. Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M, Chris Bell, Omar Cooper Jr., Jeremy Bernard. Why did I keep saying Jermaine? Jeremy Bernard at Alabama. Elijah Surratt. I'm a huge Elijah Surratt fan. He's 6'2", 213 for the coming out of Indiana for the Indiana Hoosiers. Zachariah Branch, the incredible speed. But there's one guy that I truly think is the best deep ball threat, and that's what Buffalo wants. They try to turn Keon Coleman into a jump ball, deep ball threat, and he's just not that guy. But there's a guy that's 6'5", 200 pounds, and is believed to be a genuine deep ball threat out of Tennessee, and that's Chris Brazzell II. And a lot of people really don't even be considering Brazzell II, but I think that a great combine and a great showing either at his pro day or his combine is going to rise him up the boards. I believe he's the best fit for Buffalo, for what they want, what they need. Next up, San Francisco, and we're going back-to-back with wide receivers. I've got them, again, dropped in another wide receiver. They need help. They genuinely do need help at the wide receiver position. And I've got them taking Casey Concepcion, who I believe is the better of the better wide receiver here now, although I'm going to go through, and I think that Elijah Surratt is definitely in the conversation for a top guy. But right now, Casey Concepcion is the standout best option available at the wide receiver position. They need help. I mean, really, they were running on fumes, with Ricky Pearsall seemingly being the best guy, but he was banged up in and out of injury, and Jawan Jennings, and nobody knows what's going on with Brandon Ayuk. They need some help at the wide receiver spot, so going to go with that. Now, the Texans. Oh, the Texans. They need some defensive interior help, and Lee Hunter, again, Texas Tech, another Red Raider, could be that guy, 6'4", 330, but I think that they're going to go with an offensive lineman. I think they're going to go with a guard. I talked about last week, is C.J. Stroud the guy and giving him what he needs, and offensive line help is certainly that. And while there aren't too many people that are really going with another guard in this first round, I think that there's a guy by the name of Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon that is an incredible guard and a great player. And so I've got him being taken here by the Texans at 28. Now 29, something that is so incredibly funny and I believe is a first time ever could be done by the Rams when they draft another corner. And no, this isn't the first time. This isn't the history making reason, oh, they're taking 2 corners. No, they're taking 2 corners, so same position, same school in the first round, and I believe they're going to go with Tennessee's Colton Hood. When I look at this LA Rams team, and I look at what happened and what they did and how this season kind of unfolded, I see that their offense is incredible. And while they could go out and they could get a quarterback to eventually back up Stafford when Stafford retires at some point, which could be potentially next year, the year after, or something, I think that he might wait until he can go win another Super Bowl, which this team certainly can do and are getting so close to being able to win one. If not for an incredible defense from the Seahawks, I think they probably do win one last year. And so why not continue to bolster that defense? Because I think that this offense is basically there, if not almost there. Maybe get a tight end later in this draft. You've got Max Clare and Eli Stowers out of Ohio State, Stowers out of Vanderbilt. You've got Endrice out of Texas. He's a good tight end that you could get later in this draft. There's some tackle options that they could get later. Now we've got the Broncos. Oh, the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos I find really, really interesting because the Denver Broncos could go a multitude of different ways, but I think that they're going to go linebacker, and this is where I think C.J. Allen goes. I know Denver's got a great defense, but why not? Let's make it better. When you look at some of the other needs, I'm using PFF right now, which seems to be kind of the gold standard for a lot of commonly used draft websites, and I think even to the point where a lot of the top end shows and draft shows and programming of, I believe even ESPN has used some stats and numbers and metrics from PFF. So it's starting to rise as the kind of standard. So I'm using PFF, and according to PFF, the Broncos need running back, tight end, center, and linebacker. And where they are here at 30, I don't think that there's a running back that is nearly warranted. The running backs kind of drop off after Jeremiah Love. There's definitely not a center. Tight end, I think Claire and Stowers are a second, third round guy. So let's go with linebacker, and I think that C.J. Allen is a great, incredible linebacker prospect. Now, we get the New England Patriots. And let's just rewind our minds back to that incredibly dominant win from the Seattle Seahawks, another NFC team owning the AFC in back-to-back years. And a big reason for that was the Seahawks nearly tying the single-game Super Bowl. The Seahawks falling 1 sack short of a Super Bowl tying record for most sacks in the Super Bowl. The record was 7. They had 6. Almost tied it. And so the Patriots need offensive line help, so go with tackle Monroe Freeling, which I'm seeing a lot of people mocking Monroe Freeling to go all the way up at 17 with the Lions. That's how good he is. I have him falling down quite a bit. I think there's some other options that are better. I think some other teams can wait on a tackle potentially. Don't need to take one that high. There's definitely some great players. There's a guy at Arizona State that I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name right now because it's hard and I haven't prepared it. But there's some great tackles down this board. But certainly at this position, don't really see it. Now, we get into the Seattle Seahawks. Oh, the Seattle Seahawks. What to do with this team? This team seems great. They seem almost perfect. Now, certainly they do need some help. When we look at this team, running back is a question, certainly. Is Kenneth Walker coming back or not? Could use some help at linebacker and corner depth, but I don't know if I really like some of the options here for that. But again, when you look at this team, certainly they need help on the interior. And I do truly think that there is a guy that belongs in this first round that not many people are really taking. So I'm going to use this time, and I'm going to take some time after this mock draft, and when I repeat through it, to take some time to talk about some other options and other players that are rising up the boards that could be first-round talents. But I think this guy truly is, and it is offensive guard out of Texas A&M, Chase Bisontis. Standing at 6'5", 315, Chase Besantis. A real great talent. Truly believe he is. I have found Besantis to, again, just be a real cool, fun prospect to watch. And I've enjoyed greatly watching him and some of his tape. And he's played well. He's played real well. Now, how well? I think good enough to potentially get himself into the first round. But that remains to be seen. So again, the final results of this mock draft. My mock draft 1.0 officially is, with the first overall pick in the draft, the Raiders take Fernando Mendoza. Then I have the Jets taking Arvell Reese, followed by Francis Maui-Noah. Then David Bailey, Spencer Fano by the Giants. The Browns, in their first pick of the first round, take Cardell Tate. Commanders take Ruben Bain. The Saints take Mekhi Lemon. The Chiefs take Jeremiah Love. The Bengals, they take Caleb Downs. Mansour Delane goes at 11 to the Dolphins, followed by Sonny Styles at 12 to the Cowboys. At 13, the Rams take Jermod McCoy. At 14, the Ravens, they take Jordan Tyson. At 15, the Buccaneers take Kenyon Sadiq. At 16, Caden McDonald goes to the Jets. At 17, Caden Proctor goes to the Lions. At 18, Avion Terrell goes to the Vikings. And in back-to-back Clemson Tiger fashion, at 19, the Carolina Panthers take Peter Woods. At 20, the Cowboys, they take Brandon Cisse. 21, Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington, goes to the Steelers. 22, the Chargers improve their offensive line with guard Vega Ioane. At 23, Cassius Howell, the edge rusher out of Texas A&M, goes to the Eagles. At 24, the Browns, they pick again. They take Caleb Lomu. 25, the Bears take Caleb Banks, improving their defense that needs a lot of help. 26, the Bills find their deep threat and wide receiver talent, Chris Brazzell II. At pick 27, the 49ers help their wide receiver room with Casey Concepcion. At 28, the Texans improve their O-line with Emmanuel Pregnon. At 29, the Rams take another corner out of Tennessee. It's Colton Hood. 30, it is the Broncos taking C.J. Allen. 31, going back-to-back with guys out of Georgia. Monroe Freeling, the tackle, goes to the Patriots. And finally, to round out the entire first round, Chase Besantis, I almost did it perfect, damn. Chase Besantis goes to the Seahawks. Now, we've got a couple of minutes here, so I'm going to take the final 5-ish minutes of this show to talk about a couple of first-round potential guys that could go in the first round. The first guy that I really love that I had brought up earlier is Lee Hunter, the defensive tackle out of Texas Tech. I think another guy that certainly can go in the first round is Miami's edge rusher, Akeem Mesidor. He is listed as an edge rusher, although I consider him more of a defensive tackle. Another guy a safety that has been rising up draft boards that Mel Kiper and especially Field Yates both seem to love is Toledo's Emmanuel McNeil Warren, the safety out of Toledo. Really a nice, strong talent. Keith Abney II, a corner out of Arizona, another guy that I think could definitely go high. And then some other talents that I think could kind of maybe potentially sneak their way into this first round. One of which is Oklahoma's edge rusher, R. Mason Thomas. This guy was a true difference maker. A real, genuine difference maker. This guy was a monster on the field for Oklahoma. A linebacker, Anthony Hill Jr., I know I had talked about him as well as Omar Cooper Jr. Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana, but I don't think he's going to be a first-round guy. I think a guy that's going to climb boards and jump a lot of these people are his teammate in Elijah Surratt. And finally, I think a guy that I think could move into this first round, potentially, at the very least, is definitely a top second-round talent guy, is L.T. Overton, the edge rusher out of Alabama. Those are just a couple of guys that I like, that I think could move into this first round, that are certainly some top talents. But again, this is a deep draft class, a great draft class when you get deeper down the board, especially for the wide receiver and the edge rusher positions. Again, some guys we'll look at even the edge rusher spot that haven't even picked yet. I talked about L.T. Overton. I talked about Akeem Mesidor. Romello Height, what a player he is. Again, Derek Moore out of Michigan, another great player. I believe that I need to double check it real quick. I'm going to go through and look. I believe there's another Michigan guy that I'm not sure if he's listed as a edge rusher or if he's a... So Jayshon Barham, another Michigan man. So Derek Moore, great edge rusher talent. But another guy out of Michigan, Jayshon Barham, he's listed as an edge rusher. He could play off ball too. Another great offensive talent, or defensive talent that can cause a lot of damage. Those are two great talented players. When we look at some of the cornerbacks down the board, if you're interested for those teams, D'Angelo Pons is definitely a great option. Everybody remembers him for making that crazy great play. But another Ohio State guy, Davison Igbinosun. Let's not forget Davison Igbinosun. He's a great corner out of Ohio State. So this draft class gets really deep with a lot of great talent. So certainly pay attention and be prepared for what is to come in the later rounds of this year's draft, because this draft goes deep. This draft runs really deep. And just looking across the board at some tight ends now we're looking at. Again, I had brought up Stowers, Claire, Endrice. How about Marlon Klein out of Michigan? Sat behind Colston Loveland and A.J. Barner before him, and then he got his opportunity. He balled out. How about Josh Cuevas, who seemed to be one of the more consistent receiving targets for Ty Simpson and that Alabama offense? So, again, this draft runs deep. So if you see your team not taking necessarily the position you think, but rather going best player available or at a different position spot, just know that, again, a lot of this was taken into consideration of the depth that's still available. And again, because of depth that's available at draft, it makes other positions or other players more valuable. See, because when you're at the middle of the draft and you're taking like a tackle, for instance, or you're taking an edge rusher, it's because there's some good tackles down the board, or you're skipping on a wide receiver because there's some good wide receiver options, and so that kind of can decrease or increase the value of a position group. So that's why I talk about depth. That's why I take the time at the end of the show to talk about depth. But again, that was my mock draft 1.0. If you did enjoy, then stay tuned. Another episode of Between the 20s will be coming to you next Sunday. I'm live, me, Max Raymond, each and every Sunday here from 8 to 9. If you missed anything, want to go back and hear anything, want to go back and hear my take on any certain player, this broadcast will be re-uploaded on Spotify, but also will be posted. It is posted actually right now as you're listening to this on my YouTube page. That is Max's Mic. So you can go there, check it out. I'll be uploading some content on that and potentially trying to go live for the Combine. If not, I will definitely have some Combine content there as well. But until next week, I hope you all enjoyed. Take care and have a great, incredible Sunday.